Om Amriteshwari Namaha. Let's just begin with a brief prayer. Snehalok sumohana vadana karunardranat nayanam ramyam shrutajana vyaghram saumyam Amritanandamayi pranamami Amritanandamayi pranamami Amritanandamayi pranamami. Om Amriteshwari Namaha. My humble salutations at the lotus feet of our most beloved Amma, and my namaskaram to all my brothers and sisters who have gathered here from all across India and all over the globe. Today I'm not going to speak to you all about leadership, because I'm sure that's something that there's going to be so many group discussions and think tanks over the next couple of days. I was asked to speak today because I fall in that age group, 15 to 35. And we're all in the same phase of life. We're dynamic, we're active, we want to do good, we want to build a brighter future. Essentially, what we all want, what is it that we all want today? We want happiness and we want security in our future. Am I right? That's a common thread wherever you go in the entire world. But we all know, with all the numerous uncertainties in the world and in human society, it's not so easy. There's so many hurdles we have to face. And in this regard, the greatest blessing, the highest fortune I had and have in my life still is Amma, one of the greatest masters of our time. Without an iota of doubt, I can say that it is only because of her presence and infinite grace that I am whatever I am today. So just to give a little background about me, because just to introduce myself, I was born in the United States, and our family moved to Amma's ashram here in Amritapuri when I was around 4 or 5 years old. And I ended up being tutored in the ashram privately, so I never actually went to school. And there were times that, you don't have competition, you don't have classmates with you, that studying was really, really difficult. And I really didn't think that I would be able to go to any kind of professional course, professional college. But I'm standing here today as a doctor, a professional. And I just finished my degree in gastroenterology, as Neetu very nicely put. And I work in Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences in Kochi. It is Amma's painstaking guidance and immense grace that gave me all the courage and the perseverance I needed to achieve all my goals and mold me into what I am today. So when Swamiji had given me the topic, he said, talk about how Amma molded you. It made me really think, what would I have been if Amma was not there in my life? It's something hard to think about because I don't really remember anything before. But I think the simple answer, and not only for me, but for anybody who has been with Amma for a while, would be unhappy and discontent, in a nutshell. Most of us sitting here, I'm sure you all know that the generations have been given names. So we are all in that millennial group, or Generation Y. And what people normally, when they think about our generation, the first thing they think of are these people, they've been brought up in the world of materialism. They're all slaves to their technology. This morning, our dear Swamiji was explaining to us what he thought about texting and WhatsApp and Instagram, and what was it that he said his abbreviation would be to all of us? He said, yes, complete waste of time. So that's the general opinion of our generation, not as people, but of what we like or what we are supposedly addicted to, and that's our technology. And myself included, you sometimes get a little annoyed. You think, what is the big deal? I mean, extremes are not good of anything, but still, we want a phone, we want a computer, we want a decent job, want to have a nice social network profile, a good online presence. We want to have studied something that we actually like so that we feel like going to work or going to school every day. I mean, it's not so much to ask. We're not asking for anything that great. But if you look at it, basically we are all searching for happiness in the way that we feel makes sense. However, there's one fundamental mistake that we all make in this pursuit, endless pursuit of happiness, and that is that we are all searching for happiness in our future. And in our rush to prepare for a better tomorrow, we completely miss out on what's happening in the present moment, or how much we have to gain from the present moment. Our hopes for happiness are always in the future, and because of that, peace, happiness, contentment, joy, essentially anything of any beauty that's happening right now, today, we just miss it. So there's just a funny little incident that had happened where a boy asked his father, they were sitting and eating dinner together, and the boy said, Daddy, is it bad to eat a bug? Do they taste bad? So the father was like, shh, don't make any noise, don't talk about disgusting things, while we are eating, talking about eating bugs and all. Let's finish our dinner. So the boy became quiet and he finished his meal, and after he was done, the father said, okay, now we're done with eating. What was it that you wanted to ask? So the boy said, oh, don't worry about it. It's just that you had a bug on your dosha and now you've eaten it. So it's okay, it doesn't matter. But if you look at it, essentially, we are a little bit, our situation is like this. We usually figure out what we should have said after the time has passed, we've already finished speaking. So we live in a quick fix world, like Swamiji had also mentioned this morning. We have fast life, fast food, fast track, quick money. And in that whole process of being fast, the present moment escapes us. We're so concentrated on reaping a good future that we forget to act in the present moment. This is why Amma often says, befriend the present and the future will automatically become your best friend. But again, what exactly does it mean? Like, how do you live in the present moment? We're all living in the present moment. We're all existing right now. So what exactly does that mean? How do we enjoy today while working towards a brighter future? Again, here, what we need is a slight change in our attitude or a change in our priorities. In our endless search of happiness, we're always trying to correct or change what is going on around us. Some people think that they're going to be happy if they get a good education and a well-paid job. Others think it's about a fancy house and the most expensive car. Other people want to have a good partner, wife or husband, and good, smart children. Some think it's in going to parties and having drinking, smoking, getting high, like one of the AYUDH members had said this morning. So these are all essentially different versions of what we perceive or what we think to be happiness. But by changing our external world alone, we will not automatically become happy. I can give you the example of my own parents. Their search for happiness took them all the way to the United States. And they had a huge house, many cars, they lived what people think is the American dream. There's so many people, even in India today, we call it the brain drain, where people leave the country to go to the West searching for more opportunity. That's also, in a way, a search for happiness. But in spite of, my parents achieving this so-called American dream, once they met Amma, they understood that happiness obtained from such comforts can always only be fleeting. And they found that contentment that they were always searching for when they met Amma. So when Amma often says, when we air condition our homes, cars, offices, today everything is air conditioned. Millionaires live in huge golden palaces, but they still cannot fall asleep while lying in their air-conditioned rooms. Recently Amma had gone to Abu Dhabi to speak about child dignity in the digital age. So I used to think, when Amma said this again and again, people live in golden palaces, I used to think, people live in luxury, but golden palaces is a little bit of an overkill. But when we were there was a hotel right next to the venue that Amma was speaking at. And the entire hotel was actually plated in solid gold. So that's the extent to which we go to search for happiness. People have actually built what Amma talks about, golden palaces. But then, as Amma said, some people even commit suicide in their luxurious rooms. So if happiness was in the object, and if it was dependent on these external comforts, why would a person who have it also suffer? So what we need to do is air condition our own mind. We need to change our own mind. Here again we hit some kind of a roadblock. Air condition our mind? What does that mean? How do you change your own mind? It's hard to get over simple, small, bad habits. Okay, I'm sure some of you would have had the habit of biting your nails. Okay, say for example. Or we always want to wait. Some people may have a bad habit of waking up very late in the morning. They can't wake up early. It's so hard to get over these small habits. Think about something like changing your whole attitude. We don't even know where to start. We hear Amma talk about these things and it's hard, it's difficult to know how to exactly start. This is where you actually need the help and guidance of somebody who has reached that state, a spiritual master like Amma. So Amma says, when we want to learn how to play the guitar, what do? We don't inherently know. We have the talent inside, but we don't know. So we find a teacher. I'm sure most of you or many of you sitting here have learned driving. How did you learn driving? Somebody taught you, either your brothers or your father or your parents, or you went to driving school. So you need a teacher for everything. So Amma says, just as we need to call the internet company to help us when our internet connection is down, spirituality is the means to restore our connection with our own inner divinity, with our own joy, the happiness that is there within each and every one of us. And for this, we need the perfect master. When we develop the right attitude, the Satguru will help us remove all obstacles from our path and lead us to ultimate freedom from sorrow. So as I said before, we need a teacher for everything, right? So from the day we're born, who's our first teacher? Our mother is our first teacher. Then our father, then we have our siblings, our grandparents, school teachers, college teachers, and then are we done once we finish college? No. We have our spouse, our husband, our wife, we have our colleagues. Soon our children will start teaching us. Then our grandchildren will start teaching us. And we need somebody to help us, somebody or the other to help us learn new things. So if you look at it that way, of all of our teachers, the ultimate teacher is the Satguru. Why? Because that teacher, that is the person who is going to teach us how to find that everlasting contentment within, that happiness that is there, yet we are not able to see it. So a good teacher teaches at the level of the student. They understand what their student knows and doesn't know. They understand the aptitude, they understand the maturity level of the student, and they teach accordingly. So I'd like to share an incident that happened to me while I was in my third year of medical college. we go on these rotations where you go with your professors and you see new patients and you learn from the way they interact with the patients. So it was our first rotation through psychiatry. And I was really excited because, it's a different type of medicine and you've heard of crazy people and all kinds of that. And I just wanted to know, how is it going to be my first psychiatry patient? So we walk into the first room and there's nobody on the bed. And we look and we find that the patient is sitting underneath the bed in a corner against the wall and is just like deathly afraid of something. So essentially what the story is that she is schizophrenic, which means that they see things in front of them that are not actually there. So this it was a woman, and she vehemently believed that her husband from her previous life was sitting on top of the fan with a gun held to her head and was saying, "Give me back my wedding ring. Give me back my wedding ring." And the lady couldn't sleep, the lady couldn't eat, she couldn't do anything because she was so deathly afraid of her previous life husband sitting on top of the fan. Now, what are you going to do? Now, my concept at that point of a psychiatrist was that he would give her an injection and put her out, put her down, make her fall asleep, and heavily drug her so that maybe when she wakes up, she'll be a little, her chemicals inside the brain might be a little more stable. Or I thought he might say, "Listen, there is nobody on top of the fan. We are all witness. There's nobody sitting there. Everything is fine." But that's not what he did. Instead, he crawled under the bed and he held that woman's hand and he said, "Listen, don't worry. I'm going to take care of the whole thing. I know how to get that man's gun. And I will make sure I take it, and then you'll be safe." He left the room, came back 5 minutes later, and convinced the woman that the gun was in his bag and that she could sleep in peace because he's also put a security outside the door. And this is basically what happened that day. And in the process, they also gave her medications, and gradually, over a period of 2 weeks, she was sent home. So, reflecting on this incident, I realized how similar this is. The doctor's methodology is so similar to the way Amma also acts in many ways. So many of us are like this schizophrenic patient in the incident. We have an incorrect perception of what is going to give us happiness and contentment in the world. And because of that, we live with so much anxiety and stress, and we lose touch with that happiness within. Just as the doctor did not tell the woman that her hallucination or her imagination was a lie, because at that point she wouldn't have understood it, Amma actually comes to our level of maturity, understanding what we are good at, what our likes and dislikes are. She patiently listens to each and every one of our worries, no matter how insignificant it might be to her. She understands how important it is to us, and through that, slowly helps us to find happiness within. I've had the fortune to travel with Amma for about 25 years or more. And many of you are going to actually see darshan for the first time, and you'll see that Amma has a very unique way of greeting people. She embraces them, just as a mother would embrace her child. And Amma doesn't do this for a couple of hours. She does it for hours, days, weeks. In fact, like Swamiji said this morning, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, Amma is giving darshan. And when you watch darshan, you see a change in thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. Not only that they're able to, unburden themselves or cry in Amma's arms, no, but it's actually that a change happens within them and they become inspired by Amma's words and actions. You see little children, when you're sitting around Amma, you'll see these little children, they're so used to thinking of themselves alone. And they come and they give their little piggy banks that they've collected, 50 paisa, 25 paisa that they've collected here and there. They put it in their piggy banks and they bring that to Amma because they want Amma to use it for the poor people. It's a change in attitude. Amma has not asked them to bring it. It's that desire coming up within them. There's a group of Japanese students that come every year and they help with house building, and there's a couple of them that are on a wheelchair. But they, in spite of all the physical difficulties, it doesn't matter anymore to them. That inspiration they feel, that empowerment they feel when they see Amma's example, her life is a teaching, it makes them overcome all the physical limitations they may be experiencing. But it's not only about what money you can give to a charity or what physical help you can, how you can go and physically build a house. But it's also the small, kind little gestures that Amma inspires within us. Like a kind look, a loving word. And that transformation that happens in other people because of what we do in Amma's example. I'd like to share another incident that happened a couple of years. I had a patient who had bile duct cancer. He had a form of cancer. And this cancer was caused by alcoholism. And he was an alcoholic. His entire family had deserted him, and he lived alone about 4 hours away from the hospital. No family. He worked as a fisherman to somehow make ends meet. So you often see, especially when you work with alcoholics, you see that in general people's attitude is, they knew that this was going to happen. They knew alcohol was bad for them, and they still went and drank. Now they're reaping the results of their actions, what to do. And that even if you want to feel compassionate, somehow your mind drags you down and that thought process comes. They did it to themselves. So we diagnosed this man with bile duct cancer, and it was too late. There was nothing much we could do to help him, but he was jaundiced and he had itching, all uncontrollable itching. So we wanted to give him a little bit of relief so that he would have some quality of life. The procedure he needed was expensive, so we went out of our way to make sure that he got the procedure done for free. So initially the man, when he found out he was going to die of cancer, he reacted in anger, and he would shout at everybody and anybody that came near him, and it got to a point that people wanted him to just leave. Somehow we have to discharge this patient. But once he had the procedure and he felt a little better, his anger came down a little bit and he went home. He was supposed to come back 1 month later and he never showed up. So I went and I asked my professor, see, he's not here, shall we try to call him? And my professor said, that man is probably in some ditch drunk. Why? If he's feeling bad, he will call you. Just wait for him to call you. You have so much work, you continue your own work. What are you wasting time? It's true in a way. My mind kind of justified it. Yeah, it's logical what my teacher is saying, but somewhere in my mind, Amma's words popped up. Don't judge a person's behavior by what you see. So many horrible things may have happened to that person that led them to that state in their lives. Compassion should not have any conditions. Love for the sake of loving. So I thought, okay, fine. I will call the patient, and I looked into his patient chart and I found the number and I called, and some random man picked up and said, I am sorry, there is no home delivery in Chaya Kada in a tea shop, and hung up the phone. So I didn't understand what this number, I thought it was a wrong number. I called back again, and it so happened that was he doesn't have a phone, this man. He's so poor, he has no phone. So he gave the little tea shop next to his house, he just put that number in the hospital record. So to make a long story short, I finally got a hold of that patient. And I called him and I asked him, how are you? You didn't come for your review visit. And there was silence on the phone, nobody speaking. Finally, after I asked a couple of times, there was like somebody was choking, like he was crying on the other side, and he said, you really called me? I have never ever received a phone call in my entire life. And the man couldn't even speak. Nobody had ever cared enough to call him. Just imagine, we in our generation, without a phone, you cannot even live. And this man, end of his life dying, nobody had ever called him. So he was very touched, and I told him, call. I gave him my number and I told him to call, and that was the end of that incident. A couple of weeks later, I am in the middle of rounds and I get a call from the secretary in my office saying, Dr. Priya, immediately come. There's a man standing in the middle of the outpatient department with a bucket of fish. And I was so confused. I thought somebody was, honestly, it was April 1st, okay. And I thought that somebody was pulling an April Fool's prank on me. So I hung up the phone. Then again they called after 10 minutes and I thought, okay, wait, I shouldn't completely ignore them. So I went to the OPD to see what was happening, and it's this man. And he's jaundiced and he's emaciated and skinny, he's end-stage cancer. But he doesn't even have shoes on his feet. But he has traveled 4 hours, God alone knows how he got money for the bus, with 3 live fish inside a bucket. And he ran over to me and put this bucket in my hand and he said, "Madam, I had to give you something in return for calling me. And the only thing I could give you, the best gift I could think of, is to give you the freshest fish. So I even brought them alive inside a bucket." Just think about it. I don't even eat fish, okay. But I mean, you have that. I think that's probably the gift, the most loving gift somebody had ever given to me. And I took it, obviously. But it really made me think, when Amma says that the tiniest little thing you do, you don't even realize how that affects the life of somebody next to you. That man died after a month and a half or so. And that tea stall owner, he called me and he said, "Are you Dr. Priya? I just wanted to let you know that till the day he died, his biggest pride was that a doctor from a big hospital directly called me to ask me how I was." Just think about it. So there's a beautiful quote of Amma's where Amma says, that we consider our greatest achievements, our crowning moments in life to be, I'm sure all of us, the day we pass college, or even the day we got our 12th standard marks. It's a big day for us. We're done with school, Then the day we pass our bachelor's and our college degree, the day we get our first job. These are great achievements, there's no doubt about that. But Amma says that still greater achievements are in the small things that we do. Consoling a miserable soul, wiping the tears of a crying person, feeding the hungry, helping somebody up who has fallen down. These seemingly trivial things are actually much greater than any worldly achievement we can ever attain. And this story is just a single example of that. And I am sure that there are so many of you here today that can give me an example of how something they didn't think was important actually affected the person next to them. And these small acts of compassion, of humility, of courage, of patience, that Amma inspires in people, that is the true power of a Sadguru. Amma said in her message today, "Ende kaigal ningalilude." She said that in the story where Amma gave of the statue, where God's saying, "My hands are through you." Amma sits there 24/7 embracing people with her arms. That itself is a miracle we can never even imagine. How can somebody sit and embrace that many people? But that is just the beginning of Amma's miracle. Amma's miracle goes so much further. Each and every one of the 1,000+ of you sitting here, her hands are through you. And her hands will also be through each of the millions of people you go on to touch. Just imagine the impact. Where does it end? It won't end, because each of us have the power. That's when they say, Swamiji mentioned, we're each just a seed. But we have the power to become the largest tree in the world. We are the greatest. We are God because of that. And it starts by a little bit of inspiration. And that inspiration, that want to do something good, that is awakened within us when we meet a Sadguru like Amma. And that is the whole point, one of the main reasons for such a meeting. What is there now that is going to build a brighter future. Yes, so many things we're going to learn about leadership. That's true. But there's another opportunity which I wanted to speak about today, and that is the opportunity to meet somebody, to meet that Satguru like Amma, that actually shows us through action that we can transform the entire world. We may not think we are anything special, I'm just somebody who works in some hospital, a doctor, but that each and every person who meets Amma does change. We won't see the change necessarily. Amma says, when you go to a perfume factory, that fragrance stays with you even when you leave the factory. But Amma's is not just a fragrance that lingers for a while and disappears. It's the fragrance of eternal love, that completely selfless love that she awakens inside of us, that changes us not only in this life but lifetimes to come, and it transforms those who we interact with. We've all heard that love is the greatest power. We need love. We need to love what we do in order to succeed. We've all heard that. In fact, I'm sure many of you have heard Sachin Tendulkar's famous interview where they ask him, how do you deal with all the strain of competition and injuries and whatnot? And he says, in short, you have to be in love with cricket, completely in love. And before you lay the foundation on the actual cricket field, you have to lay that in your heart. And from there, you build yourself up to be the ideal sports person. So it's true. Just by loving what we do, we can attain success in a material aspect, yes. But that isn't enough. What does the Satguru do? The Satguru teaches us how to awaken this passion for what we do, yes. But also teaches us that passion alone is not enough, compassion is also needed. And when we bring selflessness into the equation, that is when we truly experience joy. And they teach us that it's not about the individual action, but it's about the attitude behind the action that really makes it of benefit to both us and the entire world. When I had finished my 10th standard board exams, that time board exams were still there in 10th, I'm not sure about now, but I had decided what I wanted to do after school. I was convinced. I wanted to study Sanskrit. So many of the brahmacharis and the brahmacharinis living in the ashram, they had all studied Sanskrit, and they would discuss all the scriptures with each other and talk in Sanskrit to each other, and they all knew all these stories, and I thought, of course, it's obvious, I'm going to become like that too, there's no question about it. So when I finished my 10th standard and I had done okay, and I went to Amma and said, Amma, this is my marks, and almost as though it was obvious, I said, yeah, so I'll go ahead and start studying for Sanskrit. No, it's obvious, right? And Amma just very plainly looked at me and said, no, you will be doing medicine. And so my father is a doctor. So I have heard all about, what he went through to become a doctor. And I have great respect for it. I liked that profession. But I couldn't even imagine 15 years of study. No. And I was so used to being in the ashram that I couldn't imagine, missing watching Amma's darshan, missing bhajans. At that time, it was a big part of my life. I would sit for all the bhajan sessions. I'm sure you'll all have the opportunity to hear bhajans. And on Tuesday, I'm sure you'll all be there when Amma has a question and answer session and she serves lunch. So these were all things that were so part and parcel of my life. And every day is a celebration in Amritapuri. Every day is a festival. So I thought, I don't care what it is. I have to find a logical excuse to not do medicine. Okay. Finally, I thought about it, and I went to Amma and I said, I was sure this argument was going to get applause from the whole audience, and Amma was going to think, she's such a deep child, and I was so proud of my argument. So I went to Amma and I said, all these years, Amma, you have been teaching that you have to go beyond the body, beyond this, so-called bag of bones and blood. And that is the role of spirituality. You are the one that told me that, right? And now you are sending me 15 years to go and study about the body. How will I ever progress spiritually? And I was so convinced that I had the best argument in the situation. And Amma looked at me with a loving smile, patiently, and she told me, my child, you don't need to turn your path to spirituality. You need to turn everything you do into spirituality. What a profound statement, no? So she continued to say, each and every page you turn in your medical textbook, imagine that you are studying about Amma's body. And each and every patient that you meet, love and serve them like you would have loved and served me if I had come to you. Then studying medicine for you will be the ultimate path to success. It will be the ultimate path to joy. And it will be the ultimate path to service. And this is what Amma does. Amma looks at each and every one of us, irrespective, like Swamiji said in the morning, whatever our weaknesses, our plus points and our minus points. But she takes you. She sees that you have the brightest future. And she shows you, she teaches you how to turn that future into the greatest source of social service and the greatest source of joy for yourself. So I was asked to speak on how Amma molded me personally, how Amma helped me become what I am today. It's hard to really pinpoint a specific incident or a specific, moment where suddenly, a light bulb flashes. I understand. Nothing that, marvelous. But it essentially, I don't even remember a time before and after, so I can't even give you that kind of an example. But I think irrespective of when and where each and every one of us meets Amma, what Amma does is gives us a much greater purpose. She gives us a concrete goal to work towards. Amma gives us a glimpse of her divine resplendent self. And she gives us a proof that all these scriptures that we hear about are actually true. You can attain that kind of a state. Amma shows us that amidst all the horror of this entire planet, all the hopelessness and the suffering we see around, that there is still so much good and there is so much more to aspire to. Each moment Amma walks with us hand in hand as she ever patiently shows us how to see that divinity within everyone and everything on this planet. And through seeing that divinity, how to find that within ourselves as well. And the beauty in this process is that there is no force. It's 100% spontaneous. In Amma's presence, you want to change. You want to become a better version of yourself. And you want to understand how is it that she can always be so happy? How is it that she is able to change the world? What can I do to become like that? That desire, that thirst, it comes automatically. Now when you are in the ashram, even today I'm sure you saw these little tiny kids dancing on the stage with the balloons, and you see them, they're all ashram residents, they're running around all over the place. And they're from all over the world, there's many from India, they're from China, they're from Spain, the United States, France, Japan, all over the place. There's almost a state representative child from each country in the world. But one thing you will see when you look at them is they compete with each other to chant Vedic hymns, Vedic shlokas. They compete with each other to know the maximum Puranic stories of God. When Amma talks, you will see all these 3-4-year-olds sprawled out in front of Amma, absolute silence. How is it that when you're a child, in school you don't see children sitting that quietly, no matter how animated the teacher becomes. And here you have this group of little tiny kids sitting there, absolute silence, listening to Amma expound about the reality of our divine self. And there is no movement. But this happens spontaneously in Amma's presence. Amma doesn't force. I remember when I was 6-7-year-old, at that time, Archana, the morning prayers were at 4 a.m. So me and my younger brother, we used to fight with each other to somehow wake up as early as we can and go to spread our little mat in the Kali temple and be the first ones there. We had to be the first ones. And it's not because our mother had a stick, a ruler and said, wake up in the morning and alarm clocks, nothing. Amma's room is right next to the Kali temple. So in those days, where she would peek out of the curtain of her window, you'd see a small flutter in the curtain and she would look. Okay, these people are there, these people are not there. There was not that many people in the ashram. And we wanted to be the ones to show that yes, we listen to you and we understand that it's important and we are going to be there for Archana. But how does that change come in somebody who's so young? They don't have understanding necessarily. It comes spontaneously in Amma's presence, and that change happens irrespective of age. Everybody changes. We sometimes see it, sometimes we don't see it. So I am almost reaching the end of my time. But basically I'd like to end by saying that we are so infinitely lucky, so incredibly fortunate to be in the supreme presence of a master like Amma. Because it's not only a master. In addition to being a spiritual master, Amma is the sweetest mother in the entire world. She's the most affectionate father. She's the best and most understanding guide. Really say they have all of that. Very few. You have some, but you don't have everything. It's said that the greatest gift a human can ever receive is to live in the presence of such a master. Every moment spent in their presence, every moment spent in their remembrance, that is the most precious gift anyone could receive. So if you look at it in that way, our power, whatever I am today. But I can say without any doubt that everything was only because of Amma. She is all the happiness, all the love and all the laughter in my life. She is the cause of all success, now and in the future. And this is not only about me. The topic of this AYUDH meet is now is the future. This opportunity has been given to us now. Apart from all the other things we're going to learn about being the best leader, about making the biggest social impact, I pray that the pure light of Amma's infinite love guides each and every one of us throughout our lives. And with this, I'd like to end today. Om Amriteshwari Namaha.